try this again. Alrighty, so I watched through the stream test that I did, and it wasn't so terrible. I do apologize for the low upload speed here. There's not much I can do about it at the moment, so I will try to investigate that more and get this smoother. But for now, this is what I'm going to do, and hope you all like it. I'm just going to try to do this as regular as possible. It's something that helps me stay in practice. I do enjoy it. And I will work on being better at responding to chats and things later on, but for now I'm just going to work, assuming people are going to watch this later, and try to answer as many questions as possible. But do keep in mind the questions like what kind of clay do I use and things like that. Those can be found in almost every video that I have posted already. If you look at the top pinned response in the chat. But just in case you're wondering, for the 100th time, it is super Sculpty. Comes in boxes like this. You can get it in the major craft store like Michael's. The particular kind that I like to use here is this firm, super Sculpty firm, and it comes in this nice gray color, which used to be something that you had to tint by yourself, but it now comes pre-made and pre-dried out for you. But you see that this brick, this 1 pound brick that it comes in, is ridiculously stiff and firm, and has almost no bend to it. It's solid like a rock. You have to cut it up, and you'll see after time, after these have sat for a really long time, you see they sort of split. But the oil doesn't really go anywhere. I mean, you can sort of wick the oil out with paper. If you stick it on a piece of paper, is I cut it up into small pieces, and then I will roll it out sometimes here in the pasta maker, that guy there, and then I will put it into these little strips, because I find these a lot easier to deal with. You see how they're flexible even at room temperature. I just hold it in my hand for 30 seconds and it will warm up as I'm using it. So I end up reconstituting it, reclaiming it from old sculptures like that, putting it into another box. And so yeah, when it comes out of the pasta maker, it looks like this nice little sheets. So those are also nice to use, but you'll see how they get kind of crumbly, not so great. But anyway, I'm not going to get too much into that stuff now. I will wait later. Maybe I'll do some specific lessons on how to make tools and things like that again, because I think people like to see those. But for now, I'm going to actually force myself just to use tools that I made, which are just simple carved tools from wooden dowels. So you get a standard wooden dowel, or you can get a really nice thing to use is these bamboo skewers. They come at this much smaller size, but they're a lot harder and sand well if you want to make nice little shapes out of them. And the standard kind of shape that I do, I just cut. You see, it's a straight, almost straight angle, a little bit of a curve to it on this inside. But I will just use an X-Acto carving tool, carve this down into the shape that I like, and then sandpaper. That's about it. So this is just different grades of sandpaper polished down to a nice, pretty smooth. And you see I have a few of them at different sizes. I will use different things. This is a nice one because I think this one's bamboo. It's a little different kind of wood, but see, I'll use that same shape. Sometimes I'll curve it outward, sometimes I'll curve it in, sometimes I make a little wedge shape like that out of it. You see that one doesn't work so well. Whatever that material is, it kind of splinters when you carve it. So I think this one's a bamboo one. Bamboo is not always the greatest, but if you get a nice hardwood, something that's carvable, you can see you can make that shape. That flat one's really nice and useful. Having like a point like this, almost like a fingernail point, very useful. And then everything else I use is pretty much standard. I'll show you my little bucket over here. It is just some standard dental tools that you can buy. These are useful. They call them, what do they call them? I think the plastic tools. If you ever look in an actual dental catalog, they use them for plastic caps. They have these nice flat, smooth pieces to them. I have one tool that I really love that I seem to keep losing. I actually don't know where it is right now. But if you ever get a dental tool that has a very sharp hook or something on it, or you break one like I did here, you can also hammer these down on a anvil. I have a little small anvil that's just built into the clamp, regular old vice crank clamp, and if you hammer them down while they're hot, they won't break as much, and then you can sand them and make your own little nice plastic cap. And this used to be a very sharp hook, but I converted it into this tool, which is very similar to the tool that I love, which has a little curve to it. It makes really nice shapes. Other than that, I always recommend getting these spheres of different sizes. Very useful. This is a kit you can buy at a craft store. It's a nice nice little kit. Got 3 sizes there. I use these a lot. It does have shapers on the other end. Shapers are rubber, and they can be useful, but I still have never really gotten into shapers. As much as I like the idea of having a small shaper, I think the only one I've ever really used is this one. And they come in different rubber firmness, but this one you'll see it's very floppy, and it is useful, especially because of the point, to do fine detail stuff. But I honestly, I got so used to using regular rubber tools or regular wooden tools that I get used to just using these. So that's about it for that. I'll show you. I do have quite a few different shapers and things. I got a kit of those, which is quite reasonably priced, but it's yeah, it's not really that great. And then I always go back to these guys. Are nice for carving, standard ones. And then my personal favorite, one of my favorites, probably my number 2 tool, is this one. And this is just built out of Formica. So it's the same kind of principle. Formica is a material that they use to make countertops. And this one was a big sheet of it that an artist friend of mine had that lets you, that was just a big solid piece, which normally you can't find it. Nowadays it's usually found in veneers, like a thin sheet. But if you can ever get your hands on a big piece of it, this was about a 1-inch thick piece that he had, and was able to cut a thin strip out, and I just carved this tool down, and I use it all the time. You can see how nice and polished it is. Super smooth. Just with some sandpaper and carving, you can get a really nice shape down, and I use this one all the time. So, okay, today we're going to just mess around and do some warm-up here with these fun little Among Us characters. Now this is just me playing around, and this is a private classes I was teaching to make this little guy, and then of course I went ahead and made a little dead one for fun. But these are pretty easy to do, knock them out pretty quick, so I'll show you guys how to do that, and even make this little stand, which is really helpful because otherwise they will fall over because they are back heavy there. So go through that right now, and later on planning to do a more serious one. So after this class, we'll see how much time I have today, but I'm going to try to do these regularly, at least once a week. I'm going to try for a second day a week, maybe one of the evenings, like a Tuesday. But it's going to stay free. I'm just doing this for fun. Let's stay in practice. I'll see, maybe I'll set up something later on for tips and whatever, but for now I'm just doing this for the pure joy of sharing. I do get something out of that. It's fun for me to share, and I don't know, for whatever reason I tend to do better when I have a little audience, so I'm just being honest. I'm keeping this going for me. So some of this you'll see that this is a dyed clay. It looks like a Sculpey 3 or something like that, but this is actually just regular Super Sculpey that I tinted with some simple dye. So the dye that I use is a mold making product from Smooth On. These are just simple pigment dye bottles. They're actually pretty reasonably priced. I can't remember what they were, but they were a lot less than you'd think. But these are not the expensive part of mold making. Mold making, usually the resins and the silicons can be quite expensive, but these dyes are actually the cheap part. So a few dollars, you can get a full set. Less than $100, maybe $50, you can get like a set of tints and start messing around like that. So yeah, what this is the regular Super Sculpey comes in this kind of gross flesh color, and you get used to working with it, but sometimes it's really annoying to do everything in flesh, which is really nice that they came out with this gray. But what's really cool is you put a couple drops of dye in there, and if you mix it in, you will get it all over your hands. So I did this last week, and you see it just finally came out of my fingernails. But you're better off to use some rubber gloves for this if you're going to do the mixing. But what you do is you mix it a little bit with your hands, and then you throw it through the pasta maker if you have one. I really recommend you guys get one of these. This one I've had for, oh my god, 20 years now, and it works great. And it still works. Maybe got a little worn down in the handle there, but I mean, I've used it for quite a few hours. But it really helps because it lets you reconstitute old clay. So I've got this box over here. This is just old sculptures that I've reclaimed. So you see I've got a whole box of this stuff, and if I want to get it back, it's a little crumbly and a little hard, but just running it through the pasta maker a few times, I get a really nice quality clay back. It looks dirty because it's old, but if you clean your hands before you use it, honestly, you won't get really messy, gross clay. And what I do is if I end up with a really dirty piece that's gross, I'll just mix it with gray, to be honest, and then I end up with, who cares, kind of junk clay. And I can use that to fill in and whatever else. But yeah, the flesh tone color is surprisingly easy to tint, and I was able to make a brown flesh with it just from mixing a few very carefully small drops of a couple different pigments, and it's very useful for making different tones because if you ever made something with this flesh color, you'll notice that it's got this kind of subsurface scatter translucency to it, so you can almost see my finger right through it when it's thin like that, and that has a very nice quality about it for bouncing light, much like your skin, your actual skin. So if you're trying to make a realistic little minifigure or something, it can be very useful to keep the color. But you'll notice that if you do get dirty, like this one here, there's just a couple drops of the blue dye came off the roller and tinted up my red while I was working with it. So yeah, you gotta be aware of that. You gotta really clean your hands before you use the colored clay. So I usually keep one of these guys handy, spray my hands off, paper towels, everything's in reach. So I already cleaned my hands, so I'm good to go. So right now I'm going to turn around and make one of these guys again, show you how I did it, and I'll make them out of green here, and I'll show you how I get the little stand going. So what you will need is a little bit of wire. What I have over here is just standard aluminum wire. You can find sometimes galvanized wire. The galvanized wire, though, I'm not sure what metal it is, but it comes in these spools depending on where you buy it. This stuff can be very gross on the hands. Anytime you use it, you'll notice you get black, fine, powdery metal all over your fingers. It'll get right into that clay, so be really careful when you use this kind of stuff. You want to definitely keep your cleaning stuff handy and use that. But all I need for this little guy, all I did was I built essentially a little armature by sticking a wire into the leg and poking it into a base. That's really it. I know it's kind of simple, but it works surprisingly well. And I'm going to drop stuff. Alright, so all you need to do is clip off a tiny little piece, maybe half an inch. Keep that ready. And we'll get started. So, I'm purposefully not playing any music, by the way, just because, well, for a lot of reasons. Everybody knows streaming rights. I know there's free stuff out there, but I'm going to keep the music off on these just to allow everybody to play their own music. Because I wouldn't want to force you to listen to mine, but I think later on I might start, depending on how good my streaming can be, I might start telling you guys what I'm listening to, in case you want to listen along. But I'll be doing things just like streaming whatever Amazon Music, some categories. But for now, I'm keeping it quiet. I'm just going to do this for another half an hour or so till I get this guy made. And then we're going to do a much more realistic character over the next few lessons. I've got permission from an artist from Instagram who does these really nice concept art. I'll give you a little peek. Oops, not that one. It is that one. So this artist, just so you know, on Instagram, that's her address. She's also a DeviantArt. I'll be making this full figure, just like this. So if you've seen my other lessons, you know you can do it. We're doing we're gonna do a full armature and go through all the steps, how to make props, how to do all these little things. I'm probably not going to do it in color. I think I'm going to just do it in gray and set it up for paint. But as a fun little warm-up, I'm doing this other version. So we are doing a simple, oops, not the dead one, simple little guy. So the dead one was actually pretty simple. I just started with the bone, wrapped some colored pieces around it. Same principle otherwise, but for fun, standy one, and then of course any props you like. You want to make your hats and all that stuff. Alrighty, so here we go. So this is going to be pretty much the most simple way possible. I'm going to try to keep it all one piece and just carve away. It's hard to get exactly the same scale. I'm not really trying that hard, but I will try to make it the same scale as the red one. Anytime you dye clay like this, you do run that risk of it not being perfectly mixed. Like I said, you have to just mix it a bunch. It's a little cold right now, so it's not as soft as it could be. This is not the firm Sculpting, but this is clay that has been sitting for more than 10 years. So it's pretty old, and as it ages like that, it does firm up. The oil goes somewhere. And it seeps into the wood if you have it on a wood base, or I don't know if it can't really evaporate. So I'm not sure what happens to the oil, but if you don't bake the clay and it sits for a good 10 years, it will firm up like this. You can see it's not nearly as squishy. I'm holding it in hands that are not super cold, and it's not falling apart. Like if you ever buy that Sculpey 1 or 2, or the other kinds of Sculpey that you can still bake. Like there's a white variety that's really nice white, but it is so squishy in your hands that you can almost not use it. It's so pliable. Anyway, I'm just like you do with 3D modeling or anything else, I'm going to start with primitive shape, very close to what it looks like. Now the backpack, you could add it on or pull it out depending on how you model. Now I'm going to try to match this size, so I'm going to go somewhat like that. I'm going to lose a little clay when I split the legs, but yeah, it's almost too much. So you see how thick it is from front to back. So I don't need to add any more. So I'm going to actually just take away from the back of the legs here and make a backpack out of that. hide the seam. Now this kind of clay is really easy to stick to itself. As I said in my comments, very easy to join to itself. Now I did get some comments saying that of course any clay joins to itself. And yeah, that's not a wrong statement either, but to run the risk of being too pedantic, it is, I find this clay easier than most clays to join to itself, especially to hide seams. So I'm just going to give you a quick example here, just to prove my point. If I wanted to join a piece to another piece like that, let's say I'm doing a whatever feature, and I want it to be seamless, I have to get that seam to be perfect on another piece of clay, another type of clay would be very hard to do. But here, if I just smooth it a little bit, even with my fingers, if there's no air pockets in there, and you smooth that in, it will be invisible in a few seconds. So, I mean, that's what I mean by it being easy to join to itself. You can hide joins without any kind of loss in quality or surface quality or even strength of the material itself. So welcome everybody, if anybody's here. I can't really tell. I'm not really monitoring the stream like I said, but I will try to get to do that eventually. For now I'm just sort of figuring out how to do this from OBS to YouTube. And again, I apologize for the low quality in the stream here, but it should be enough that you can hear me, at least see what I'm doing, and I will work on that. But for now, this is the best way to make sure I do this regularly and have at least a quality that can be watchable. Okay, so massaging a little backpack shape out of that. Almost got the same size, not too bad. These guys are ultra simple. They seem like just a little dot with another dot on them, but when you start really getting into these shapes, you'll notice it's not actually that simple. When you start pulling legs out, you'll feel, if you've ever messed with this kind of clay, any kind of clay really, you'll start to lose, the height will get stretched and things will get all wonky. So there's always something you can do to keep it from losing its shape, but you do want to just want to get the clay in your hands. You practice as much as possible. I'll give you guys some tips for practicing after you do this. So you see I'm just cutting out the middle bit because there's a little too much clay there. So pretty simple, but you see it's going to get closer and closer, but you kind of need to do that because there's just too much clay there to taper down into those legs. And I'll end up rounding them off just with my fingers. If it ends up too long, I'll just cut them off, which it probably will, because you'll see how there's just too much mass there. I'm trying to get them as even as possible. Now if you're going to do a running one, they do change, of course. The drawings are pretty simple, but they are deceptively complex if you really start getting into the shapes. So if you want to do a running one, yeah, you may want to do a little bit longer legs like this, and you can make him run. So maybe I'll just do that for fun this time. I'll still show you how to set up the base. Yeah, they really don't have much to them, but still good to know some anatomy. Alright, so I've got the general shape where I want it. I'm just going to start smoothing things out now. And I'll add on the visor at the last second, some gray.